political worldviews. This is a matter of kids who are saying this isn't working when it comes to the current education system.
Yeah, that's right. And those numbers are astounding. I'm not surprised. We felt it at Colby Academy, this huge surge. Back when I was homeschooled in the 80s and 90s, I would have never expected this, even if I was thinking ahead that much. But it reminds me of on the documentary how the lady said that, they're connecting. One of the mothers was saying they were connecting through this Facebook group. It is as though your world gets very small. She was talking about how her world got really small because she couldn't even work anymore. And when you find, though, and there are lots of resources out there now, much more than what we had when I was growing up, you find that it gets much bigger. And apparently that's just going to grow and grow and grow. I went and bought chicken feed the other day, and my kids were with me, and the guy asked why they weren't at school. I said they were homeschooled. And he said, wow, I keep meeting homeschoolers, and I would have never thought that this would happen. So even anecdotally, we're seeing it a lot more. And I would encourage people out there, if you're interested in it, I guarantee there's a group in your area, or at least you'll have easier access to an online community than they're having in Australia at the moment without waitlists.
Yeah, when you mentioned homeschooling groups, they're everywhere. We grew up with homeschooling groups. We had a big family homeschooling group. We had a big homeschooling group in our small community that we grew up in. And I, for the longest time, Jordan, used to cringe if anyone found out I was homeschooled because there's been such a stigma for so long. Over the last couple of years, that's changed. Even people I know in friendship and family type circumstances have always been at times very critical. And in fact, there have been family rifts over the issue of homeschooling. People believing that your kid's going to be stupid if they are educated at home, and even people going so far as to maybe try to intervene with thinking that they know better and that they need to do something to prevent you from homeschooling. You hear this from a lot of families, and yeah, I think the tide is turning. People see more often than not that kids who are homeschooling into adult life are being, I think, in a place where they're able to communicate better often with adults and use critical thinking to maybe even fill in the gaps that can at times occur depending on how the parents navigate homeschooling. I'd love for you to touch on that, Jordan. If you're just joining me, that's Jordan Alamanzer from Colby Academy. He's the Director of Alumni and Public Relations. If you'd like to learn more, head over to relevantradio.com/Colby. That's relevantradio.com/Colby, Kolbe. With the challenge of homeschooling, some parents are concerned that their children will fall behind or be ill prepared to meet the real world. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've seen the exact opposite. It is amazing that homeschooling and homeschoolers are really validating the type of education it is. And I've been teaching at the college level at a college where we had a lot of homeschoolers. Some of them students I had taught all through high school online, and then they came to the college. I met them in person. And I'm just amazed at the successes of a lot of these students. We just had a graduation down in Atlanta, and we had an alumni come, and he's just such an impressive guy in any situation. And his speech was actually, he did a speech at one of the events, and it was about this very thing, that there was a time when he was in high school like you where he would sort of cringe if people found out that he was homeschooled, and now he wears it as a badge of honor. And I think that that's only going to increase. Homeschoolers do fantastically well on tests. And I've also heard from a lot of employers that they like to hire people who are homeschooled simply because they're well adjusted. They know how to talk to adults a lot of the time. And so this is all generalization, of course, but I think that statistically it bears proof, and people are really seeing it these days.
And I do want to honestly touch on the opposite side of homeschooling as well, where you do have, there's that concern, Jordan, where people will say, well, kids who are homeschooled aren't socialized, or kids who are homeschooled are awkward. And I absolutely agree. You can see that, but that's really determined by the parents at the end of the day. For me, my parents were really great we were socializing with other friends and family, and I was involved very rigorously in dance programs. So I was around other kids, public school kids, people who didn't agree necessarily with our same worldview in totality. And so I think that socialization argument is really a fault of the parents. And if there's awkwardness in interacting with others, again, those are skills that parents need to intuitively work on and pass on to their children. So I don't think you can blame homeschooling per se. And because of those two elements, I think homeschooling sometimes receives a bad rap.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think what you described as doing dance with other people that are of a different worldview, all of that. Yeah, it's on the parents. I mean, but I think that that's the right way to do it. I have my kids playing sports. I played sports at the local public school in the state that I grew up in. It was available, and it still is in many states in the U.S. But yeah, that's part of it. I would say that's part of the education, is to have your kids with other kids their own age. And then also a really important part is to get them with younger people that are not in their generation and older people, and just have them part of the whole society like that. But definitely being teammates and friends with other people who are not homeschooled, I think is really important, and it is a crucial piece of that education.
Documentary, I played a little bit of clips from it, based out of Australia, and it tracks side by side with what's happening in the United States. This uptick in homeschooling in the United States, homeschooling has become the fastest growing form of education. Grant, this isn't the only solution for education. It's not the only solution for school refusal, but it's one that many parents are turning to. The numbers have more than doubled and tripled in places like DC, California, South Dakota, and others with regard to how many people are homeschooling just over the last 5 to 8 years. Now, the other day, and I find this more often than not, people are starting to ask me, hey, what are you planning on doing with your kids when it comes to school? And 5 years ago, before I had children, people would ask that question. I said, well, I think I'd probably homeschool. And I'm not sure. I don't have children, but I'm open to it. I think I might struggle with patience. However, I'm open to it. Well, at that time, it was very cringe to say, even just 5 years ago. Today, even talking to people who are from maybe an education background and others, when they start to ask, what are you thinking about for school? And they have no experience with homeschooling. When I say homeschooling, they no longer cringe. In fact, they're more so intrigued by it. But one thing I noticed from parents who are intrigued by homeschooling or curious is that there's a lot of fear preventing them from ever, one, taking the leap in homeschooling, but also, two, from even considering it as an option. What would you say to those parents, Jordan, who are fearful of the idea of homeschooling, whether it's the burden placed on their shoulders, whether or not they think their kid will thrive, the socialization element? Where's the response to all of this?
Yeah, I think what they need to do is first pray to overcome the fear of being stigmatized, because that's really all you have to lose, because you can try it, and then you could always return your prodigal sons back to the local school that they came from if it doesn't work. But it's that worry of being stigmatized, like in a lot of our situations, even by family members and things like that. I think probably the best thing to do is get online like these Australian mothers are doing, mothers and fathers, and sort of look up some groups. There's a group on Facebook called Colby Homeschooling Families. It's not officially connected with Colby. And very often, because I'm homeschooling my kids through Colby as well, I'm on there and I see very often there are people who are just wondering about it. You can also, and there's a number of good programs out there, but we have academic advisors. You could call them tomorrow by going to colby.org, KOLBE.org, and find the number. You could call them and just start asking. So I think it's taking that first step of saying, we're considering it this year. And you have nothing to lose. If it doesn't work out for you, then you can send them back. But I would pray for courage to even be able to express and vocalize, we may do this year. And maybe don't tell your kids, because they might get too excited until you take a further step.
In the thick of homeschooling, but she's feeling frustrated, and I think this touches on the fear moms have. Well, what if I do this? So, maybe they're already stay-at-home mom, or maybe they're transitioning into part-time work or being home full-time, but they think that their value is being completely lost in this. Listen to this.
And it is not something that any of us want to be doing.
Sorry, guys.
Listen to a bird chirp. Okay, so we've got to be silent while we listen for a bird chirp so we can tick that off. Tell me who... You heard one? Okay, you can tick that section when we're off the swings. Oh, I heard it too, H. Your hearing's better than mine. I was so reluctant, and I still am. I don't like doing it. It's exhausting. I want to be at work. I want to be contributing to society. I want to be earning an income for my family. I want to be setting an example for my kids.
So it says tactile.
Do you know what tactile means?
That tells you the...
I don't have any other choice. There's nowhere for my children to go that I can drop them off in the morning and be confident that they will be okay when I pick them up.
Some parents are really struggling. They feel forced into homeschooling as their kids were refusing to go to school, and especially moms. They're struggling with this idea of wanting to contribute, how challenging homeschooling can be, exhausting. They want to contribute to society, earn an income. I would love to hear from you, Jordan, because I see this for so many women. It's part of the mommy war today over working versus non-working, comparison culture, social media. What would you say to that mom who's sharing her challenge in homeschooling?
Oh man, I really feel for her. I think that she should try to press into it and enjoy the ride. I mean, my mother homeschooled us, and it was a blast, at least for us. And now that I talked to her after it's all done, it was for her as well. I think you have to sort of press into it and realize your children are going to grow up very, very quickly. And you should spend and sacrifice as much as you can for them, and it'll pay off in the long run. And it may be hard to convince people of that, but I truly believe that that's the thing. Press into it and enjoy it.